When I was 9, I first noticed it. It was the summer my mom moved us into that old rental house with the leaning porch and a yard so dry it crunched under your feet. I'd wake up sweating at night, the air heavy and thick, the old window unit droning uselessly. That first night, the shadows on my bedroom walls didn't match what I was doing. I thought I was dreaming. I lifted my arm and the shadow followed, but just a beat too soon, as if it knew I was going to move before I did. Sometimes it didn't match at all, fingers longer than mine, its head tilted a little off, the shape stretching across the walls in ways I didn't understand. I told my mom about it, but she just brushed it off. It's the old lights, honey. The house is crooked, makes everything look weird. But it wasn't the lights. It never was. That summer, things got stranger. When I ran through the yard during the day, my shadow would veer off the path, like it had a mind of its own. I'd stop dead in the middle of the cracked driveway, staring at the outline of myself shifting behind me, flickering, bending, doing things I wasn't doing. It felt like a game at first, until I realized I wasn't the one playing. One afternoon, my friend Leo came over to play. We were sitting in my room, building towers of cards that always fell before we finished. He stopped mid-sentence, staring at the wall behind me. "Why are you moving your arms like that?" he asked. "I'm not," I told him, but my stomach dropped. I turned to look at the shadow cast on the yellowing wallpaper. It was waving. Slow, deliberate, fingers like claws. Leo never came back after that. I started sleeping with the lights on, but that only made it worse. The brighter the light, the clearer it was, my shadow twitching at the edges, sometimes sliding across the floor like spilled ink. It got bolder, too. I'd stand still, staring, refusing to move, but the shape would lean forward, inches ahead of me, mocking me. When school started again, I hoped being away from the house would fix it. It didn't. In the hallway by the lockers, I caught glimpses of it, just slightly ahead of my steps. When I reached for my backpack, my shadow's arm was already there, fingers curled around air. Kids whispered about me, but I couldn't tell them what was really wrong. Who would believe me? At home, my mom was busy with her new boyfriend, a guy who smelled like cheap beer and left dirty dishes piled in the sink. I tried to tell her once more. "Mom, my shadow, it's not right." She laughed like I'd told her a joke. "Don't be weird, Jonah." So I stopped telling her. I started recording it instead. I'd set up my old flip phone on the dresser, angle it toward the corner where the shadows gathered thickest. I'd hit record, then stand in the center of the room and try not to breathe. Sometimes it wouldn't do anything. Sometimes it did. Once I saw the playback. I was frozen, arms at my sides. But on the wall, my shadow was crawling up toward the ceiling. Slowly, patiently, like it was waiting for me to notice. By the time I turned 12, I'd learned to live with it. I avoided mirrors, hated bright lights. I'd sleep with the blanket pulled over my head, one eye cracked open just enough to see if it moved. It always did. Then last night, something changed. I woke up to a whisper. It wasn't my mom's voice. It wasn't the creak of the house settling. It was right next to my ear, so close I felt the cold breath of it. "Get up," it said. "Let me go first." I sat up, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. The moonlight through the blinds cast my shadow onto the closet door. But it wasn't lying flat like it should have been. It stood there, standing while I sat. Its head turned sideways, looking at me. Waiting. I don't know what it wants yet. But I'm starting to think it doesn't just want to move first. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat on my bed, staring at the closet door, watching my shadow stand there like it was the real me and I was the reflection. Every so often, it would tilt its head or raise an arm like it was checking to see if I was paying attention. It wanted me to see it. By the time the sun rose, it had flattened back to normal, or so I told myself. When I moved, it followed in sync, the way it was supposed to. But the way its edges trembled made my stomach twist. I went to school that day feeling like a ghost of myself, eyes stinging from lack of sleep. The hall seemed darker than usual, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead. Every window felt like it reflected something back at me, but never quite right. In first period, I kept my hands folded on the desk, refusing to write, just so I wouldn't have to see what my shadow would do. Mrs. Patton asked if I was sick. I wanted to tell her yes, but what would I say? My shadow isn't mine anymore. So I just nodded, and she let me rest my head on my arms. When the final bell rang, I bolted home, ignoring the kids who snickered when I bumped into them. I felt the tug at my feet, like my shadow was dragging me somewhere I didn't want to go. At home, my mom's boyfriend, Gary, was sprawled on the couch, a beer balanced on his chest, snoring like an idling truck. I slipped past him, up the stairs, and locked my bedroom door behind me. The walls felt closer than they ever had before. I knew I should try to sleep, but the idea of closing my eyes terrified me. I grabbed my old flip phone from under my pillow and started recording again. "Are you there?" I whispered, like an idiot. Nothing. Just the hum of the house, Gary's snores echoing up the stairwell. I stood perfectly still, letting the recording run. When my knees ached, I sat on the floor and pressed my back to the bed. The air shifted. A coldness crept over my skin. I turned to the closet door. My shadow was there again, but this time, it wasn't just standing. It was crouching low, its hands pressed against the inside of the door, as if there was glass between us. I lifted my hand, but I didn't move it forward. Still, the shadow's fingers tapped at the wood, one by one. Tap, tap, tap. I scrambled for the phone and replayed what I just recorded. My breath caught when I saw it. For a few frames, my shadow's eyes glowed, too small, pinprick lights, like holes punched through the dark. They blinked. I ran downstairs, nearly tripping on the last step. Gary woke up just long enough to curse at me for making noise. I didn't care. I ran out the front door and didn't stop until I reached the broken fence at the edge of our backyard. There's a creek behind the fence, lined with oaks and sycamores. As a kid, I'd go down there to catch frogs and poke around for arrowheads that probably weren't real. I slipped through the gap in the fence and stumbled down the slope, cold mud squishing into my shoes. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe I thought if I stayed in the sunlight, it wouldn't come after me. Maybe I thought I could outrun it. But as I sat on a fallen log, trying to catch my breath, I saw it, a smear of darkness on the water's surface. My reflection, or so I thought, until it raised its hand before I did. Its fingers spread wide, then curled into a fist. Mine stayed limp at my side. I scrambled back, tripped, and landed hard on my tailbone. When I looked again, the water was just water. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was getting stronger, braver. I didn't go home until the sun was nearly gone, the trees turning to black silhouettes. Gary's truck was gone. Mom's car wasn't in the driveway. The house was dark except for the porch light, which flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. Inside, I found a note on the counter. "At work late. Gary picking me up. Left you dinner." But there was no dinner. Just an empty plate in the sink, a fork with something crusted onto it. I wasn't hungry anyway. Upstairs, I pushed open my bedroom door and froze. The closet door was wide open. My shadow wasn't where it should have been. It was halfway across the room, spread across my bed, its shape stretched and wrong. The head was too big, the arms too thin. It pulsed, like it was breathing. I backed into the hallway. But then I heard it, the whisper again. Not from my room this time, but from the hallway mirror at the end of the corridor. The one my mom used to check her makeup before work. I turned slowly, my chest tightening. In the mirror, my shadow stood behind me, tall, towering, its head bent over my shoulder. Its mouth opened, but no words came out. Just that cold, dead breath. I ran into the bathroom and slammed the door. The lock barely worked, so I pressed my back against it, listening for footsteps that never came. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked normal, tired eyes, hollow cheeks. But the shadow behind me was still wrong, its edges shimmering like heat waves on asphalt. I stayed there for hours, too afraid to move. When I finally crept back to my room, the closet was closed. My shadow was back at my feet, perfectly in sync, like nothing had happened. But I know it's waiting. I know it wants more than just to move first now. And I don't know how to stop it. I woke up on the bathroom floor with the morning sun burning through the frosted window. My back ached from sleeping on the cold tile, but I felt safer there than in my own bed. For a moment, I thought maybe it was all a dream, that the creeping dread, the whispering voice, the moving shadow were all just leftover nightmares from too many sleepless nights. But when I stood up and looked in the mirror, the hope drained out of me. The bags under my eyes were darker than ever. My skin looked almost bruised around my neck, as if someone had been pressing their fingers there while I slept. And my reflection didn't quite line up with my movements. I'd blink, and the eyes in the mirror would flutter closed a fraction too late. I splashed cold water on my face until my skin stung. I didn't want to go back to my room, but I had nowhere else to go. So I crept down the hallway, feeling that sick pull in my stomach every time I caught my shadow out of the corner of my eye. When I opened my bedroom door, it felt wrong. The air was stale, heavy. The closet door was cracked open just an inch, like it was daring me to look inside. I told myself not to. I told myself to grab my backpack and just leave for school, pretend everything was normal. But my feet moved before my brain could stop them. I knelt down and peered into the darkness. At first, I saw nothing. Just my old sneakers, a pile of dirty clothes. Then my eyes adjusted and I saw it. A deeper dark, hunched in the back corner. It shifted when I leaned closer. I heard it then, a low whisper that rattled in my chest more than my ears. "Let me go first." I jerked back, smacking my head on the closet frame. The door swung wide, but the thing in the corner was gone. My shadow, however, was still wrong. It lay on the floor beside me, its edges too sharp, like it had been cut out with a knife and pasted onto the carpet. I didn't go to school that day. I didn't think I could stand being around other people, pretending everything was okay when I could feel it watching me, inside every flicker of light. Mom came home around noon. I heard her and Gary arguing downstairs, something about money, about him borrowing again. I stayed in my room, sitting cross-legged on my bed, watching the sunlight crawl across the floor. My shadow crawled too, but it took paths the sun didn't touch, gliding from corner to corner like spilled oil. When Mom finally came up to check on me, I almost told her everything. She knocked once, then pushed open the door without waiting for me to answer. She looked tired, older somehow than she'd been just days ago. Her eyes darted around my room like she could feel it too, but didn't want to admit it. "You okay, Jonah?" she asked. "No," I whispered. "Mom, there's something in here. It's me, but not me." She sighed and rubbed her temples. "Maybe. You need sleep. You're scaring yourself. There's no monster in your room." I wanted to scream, to grab her shoulders and shake her until she saw it. But when I glanced at the wall behind her, my shadow was perfectly still, mimicking my every move. It didn't flinch. It didn't wave. It was pretending to be normal. Mom sat on the edge of my bed and ran a hand through my hair. For a moment, I almost believed her. I wanted to. I wanted her to be right, for everything to be just a nightmare. She left a mug of chamomile tea on my nightstand, kissed my forehead, and told me to rest. I dumped the tea down the bathroom sink the second she was gone. I didn't trust anything anymore, not the tea, not the lights, not my own reflection. That night, I made a plan. I wasn't going to let it corner me in the dark again. I'd stay awake. I taped a flashlight to my wrist, loaded up an old laptop with movies, and sat cross-legged on my bed, determined to keep my eyes open until sunrise. Hours crawled by. The movie flickered, then froze. The battery icon blinked red. I didn't care. As long as I could see my shadow on the wall, I'd be fine. But sometime around 3 in the morning, my eyelids grew heavy. My head drooped forward. I jerked awake at the sound of whispering soft, like wind under a door. I turned on the flashlight. My shadow was gone. I whipped the beam across the room, but it didn't reappear at my feet. It was nowhere. And then I saw it on the ceiling. Sprawled out, its limbs stretched long, fingers splayed like a spider clinging to the drywall. Its head snapped toward me, the mouth splitting open into a dark grin. I bolted for the hallway, but the door slammed shut before I reached it. The light flickered in my hand. My shadow dropped from the ceiling, flattening back into place, but not on the floor. It wrapped around my legs like a shroud, pinning me in place. I couldn't breathe. The whisper came again, right against my ear. "Let me go first." My knees buckled. The room spun. I fell backward onto the bed. For a heartbeat, the world went black. When I opened my eyes, I was standing. In the mirror across the room, I saw myself, eyes wide, mouth slack. My reflection's shadow was gone, but mine was still there, wrapped around me like smoke. I raised my hand, and this time, it didn't follow. It was already ahead of me, reaching for the closet door. The handle turned slowly, creaking open into darkness deeper than before. And I knew it wasn't going to wait for me anymore. I don't remember falling asleep after that. I don't even remember crawling under my blanket. All I know is when I woke up, it was daylight, the kind of watery, pale light that makes everything look washed out and unreal. For a few blessed seconds, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe the thing that pretended to be my shadow had given up, gone somewhere else. Then I sat up, and the world felt wrong. The air tasted stale, like old breath trapped in a jar. The house was too quiet. No clatter of dishes from the kitchen, no music from Mom's phone, no muffled TV. I looked around my room, searching for the closet door. It was wide open, empty, but the shadows in the corners seemed thicker, clinging to the walls like mold. I tiptoed to the hallway, half expecting to see Mom at the top of the stairs. But the hallway was empty, the light bulb overhead flickering like it couldn't make up its mind. I called out, "Mom," but my voice sounded small, swallowed by the silence. Downstairs, the living room looked like someone had walked out in a hurry. Mom's purse on the couch, her keys still on the hook. A mug of coffee on the table, long gone cold. I felt my stomach twist. Where was she? I stepped into the kitchen. A note was stuck to the fridge door. Jonah, went to work early. Call if you need me. Love you. But the way she wrote love you looked shaky, like her hand didn't want to finish the letters. Like something was pressing down on her wrist while she wrote. I couldn't stand the house anymore. I grabbed my backpack, threw on my sneakers, and slipped outside. The sunlight felt wrong, too bright and harsh, like a spotlight instead of warmth. I walked to the bus stop, hoping the routine would make me feel normal. At school, I couldn't focus. I stared at the whiteboard while my teachers droned on about fractions and state capitals and essays I hadn't written. But every time I looked down at my desk, my shadow flickered. Sometimes it sat still. Other times, I caught it moving just before I did, tapping its fingers, drumming out some secret message in a language only it understood. By lunch, I'd had enough. I told the nurse I felt sick and waited for her to call Mom. But when she finally got through, her face went pale. She handed me the phone with shaking fingers. Hello, I whispered. Jonah. Mom's voice was distant, like she was talking from inside a tunnel. Baby, I'm so sorry. I can't come get you right now. Her words caught. I heard something, like heavy breathing behind her. I need you to be brave, okay? Just stay at school. Don't come home until I call you. What? Mom, what's going on? Where are you? But the line went dead. The nurse tried to get her back, but it rang and rang, then went to voicemail. She gave me a pitying look and let me lie down on the cot in the back office. I curled up on my side, staring at the pale green wall, feeling my shadow twist and turn behind me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to peel it off my skin like an old sticker. When school finally ended, I didn't go straight home. I wandered the streets instead, kicking at stray pebbles, watching the sun sink lower and lower behind the roofs of houses that all looked the same. I felt like if I went back too soon, it would be waiting, crouched behind my bedroom door, grinning in the dark. But eventually, there was nowhere else to go. The house felt like it was holding its breath when I stepped inside. The lights were off, the air heavy. I called out for Mom, but no answer. I checked every room. The kitchen, the tiny laundry room, the bathroom where the mirror always felt just a bit too deep. Nothing. When I reached her bedroom door, I hesitated. I hadn't gone in there since she started locking it at night, trying to keep Gary out when he came home drunk. But tonight it was cracked open, like it was inviting me in. I pushed it wide. The bed was made, but her closet doors were open. Inside, clothes hung limp like empty skin. On her nightstand, her phone buzzed with missed calls. I reached for it, but before I could touch it, my shadow on the wall flickered. It moved first, its hand brushing the nightstand before mine even twitched. The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. I backed away, stumbling into the hallway. The shadows seemed thicker now, like ink bleeding through paper. They crawled up the walls, gathering at the corners of the ceiling. I knew where it wanted me to go. I knew where it waited. My bedroom door was open. The closet, too. Darkness spilled out like a living thing. I could feel it pulling at my skin, tugging at my heartbeat, whispering that soft, poisonous promise. Let me go first. I could have run. I could have bolted out the front door, down the street, never looked back. But my feet carried me forward. Into my room. Into the waiting dark. Inside the closet, the air was so cold my breath came out in white puffs. My shadow stood there, but not flat against the wall. It rose up from the floor, thicker than ever, its edges flickering like candle flame. Its eyes glowed, tiny white pinpricks. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. It spoke instead, in my own voice, but deeper, warped. Jonah, time to follow. And then it moved. It stepped forward, out of the closet, across the carpet, its feet making no sound. My legs moved too, but I wasn't the one moving them. I felt weightless, like I'd been scooped out from the inside. Together, we walked to the mirror by the door. It stood behind me, taller now, its hands resting on my shoulders. The glass rippled, like water disturbed by wind. I heard it laugh, not out loud, but inside my head. You'll see. You'll see what it's like when I go first. Then the mirror swallowed us whole. It didn't feel like falling through glass. It felt like being peeled apart. Every layer of me stretched and turned inside out. 1 second, I was staring at my own pale face in the hallway mirror. The next, I was staring back at myself, but from the wrong side. Everything looked warped, like someone had smeared grease across a window. The hallway behind the glass seemed distant, gray, and trembling. I lifted my hand to touch the mirror's surface, but my fingers pressed against something cold and slick, like ice. On the other side, my body stood perfectly still, my eyes wide and empty. It turned. My body turned. My own lips twisted into a smile I didn't feel. I watched it, me, step away from the mirror, leaving me behind the glass. My heart pounded, but it felt muffled, as if my chest was stuffed with wet rags. I pounded my fists against the barrier. No sound. No crack. The thing wearing my skin didn't even glance back. It walked down the hallway in my clothes, moving just a fraction too smoothly, like a puppet dancing on strings no one could see. I screamed. Or tried to. The sound was swallowed by the mirror world, echoing back at me in whispers that weren't mine. The shadows here were thick and pulsing, sliding along the walls like living ink. They wrapped around my feet, crept up my legs, hugged my ribs. I don't know how long I stayed like that, hours, days. There's no sun in here, no time, just the throb of shadows pressing closer and closer. Sometimes, I saw flickers through the glass. My room, the hallway, my mother's face twisted in confusion as she called for me. She'd walk right past the mirror, never seeing my pale, desperate eyes staring back. And him, the thing in my body, he was always right behind her, moving just out of reach. My shadow, now wearing my skin, playing my part better than I ever did. Smiling at her, holding her hand when she cried, pretending. I tried everything, kicking, punching, screaming. The glass never cracked. It just wobbled like the surface of a pond. But every time I moved, I felt the shadows pulling tighter, coiling around my throat like fingers. Then one night, I saw something that almost broke me. Mom was sitting on the couch, her back to the mirror. The thing wearing me stood behind her, its smile stretched too wide. It leaned down, whispered something in her ear. She laughed, a brittle, tired laugh. She didn't see its eyes flash black for a heartbeat. She didn't feel its hands hover an inch above her shoulders, trembling like they wanted to squeeze. I slammed my palms against the glass. I tried to shout to warn her. But the glass only showed me her reflection and my own grinning face, mocking me from the other side. The shadows in here got hungrier. They whispered, too, in my voice, in my mother's voice, in Gary's drunken mumble. You let me go first. You let me out. Now you stay. I don't sleep in here. Sleep doesn't exist. Sometimes I drift off, but when I do, I dream in shadows. I see everything the thing in my body sees. I feel its cold satisfaction when it kisses my mother's forehead goodnight. When it looks at its hands, my hands, and flexes the fingers like it's testing new tools. It's learning. It's getting better. It's making friends at school. No one notices how its eyes don't blink right, how its smile flickers at the edges. Not yet. Last week, or maybe it was last year, I felt it slip. For one flicker of a second, the barrier between me and the world went thin. I felt the floorboards under my feet, the weight of my own heart in my chest. I could almost speak. I tried to scream at my mother while she stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair, her eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. I was right there, pressed against the inside of the glass. She paused. For a heartbeat, I swear she saw me, really saw me. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted like she was about to say my name. Then my shadow, my body, appeared behind her. It laid a hand on her shoulder, and the moment snapped like a thread pulled too tight. She smiled, turning away, letting it guide her back down the hallway. She didn't look back. Now I'm trapped here. I don't know what's left of me, just a smear of a boy inside this cold, shifting dark. My body is out there, but my shadow wears it better than I ever could. It laughs in my voice, breathes with my lungs, dreams my dreams. Sometimes, I still pound on the glass. Maybe someone will hear. Maybe someday Mom will look a little longer, past her own reflection. Maybe she'll see the thing behind her isn't really me. But the shadows in here know better. They slip into my ears and hum their lullaby. You let me go first. You let me go first. Now you stay. If you ever see me, really see me, don't trust the smile. Don't trust the eyes. Watch my shadow instead. If it moves first, run. Run before the mirror decides it's your turn. Because there's room for more in here. There's always room for more.